Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiremat. Most of you may have heard the poetry of Rumi. His real name was Jalaluddin Muhammad Balka. But if I say Jalaluddin Muhammad Balka, no one understands it. But when I say Rumi, everyone comes to know that he is a great poet, and not only poet but a Sufist. That means the name of Rumi is associated with Jalaluddin so much. Actually, Rumi is an Arabic word. In Arabic, Ram, R-U-M, Ram means is of Rome. It is belonged to Rome. It is referred to Byzantine culture of Rome. And that Ram becomes Rumi, that is, Rumi has taken it as his name because of his Byzantine ideas. Of course, when we go through the poems of Rumi, it is sure we feel the liberal culture of the religion he was born and bred in. Of course, Rumi was a Persian. He was born to Persian parents in the village of Vakis on the river of Vakis in Tajikistan. But in those days, Tajikistan is culturally associated with the Balkan Empire, with Balkan culture that is in Afghanistan. So, anyhow, that Rumi was born and bred in that culture, and he became a great Sufist as he was grown up and up. Of course, there is a confusion regarding Sufism and Islam. Some Islamic scholars negate Sufism as it is not an Islamic. They say it is un-Islamic. But the Sufis say it is Islamic. But anyhow, there are some fundamental differences between Sufism and Islamic thoughts. I don't want to get into those controversies here, because here Rumi as a poet is important for us. Of course, some people say Sufism was there before Islamic arrival in Persia. See, when Islam attacked Persia and made it an Islamic state, at that time it gave the name Iran, removing the name of Persia. At that time, the first follower of Muhammad the Prophet was Salam Ibn I think. He was from Persia. So he had some ideas of those Persian culture when he entered into the Islamic culture. Yes, he was a follower of Muhammad the Prophet. So he had brought those ideas into Islamic culture and tried his level best to liberalize that culture. But anyhow, others say no, it is not. So Islam is of recent origin. It is of 7th century. But Sufism was already there before that, but it was not that much of popular except Persia. It is there everywhere. It is there in Rome. It is there in Turkey. It is there in Persia. It is there in Arabia. It is there here and there. At that time, it is called a Zoroastrian philosophy, Zoroastrian teachings. Anyhow, that due to so many happenings, due to so many disturbances at that time, that Rumi became a Sufist as well as an Islamic scholar. Rumi was born on September 30, 1207 AD in Waksa on the bank of Waksa River in Tajikistan near Balka. Balkan culture was great at that time, so he used at the end of his name that Balka also. Anyhow, as he went on and on due to the disturbances, he did not settle anywhere. He wandered here and there with his father. His father was also an Islamic scholar, Bahaduddin. As he was a teacher, as he was a preceptor, whenever kingdoms changed, he left that kingdom, he left that area and seek shelter in another area. Because in the 13th century, that Middle East was so disturbed. There was no certainty, there was no guarantee, there was no protection. And due to that, scholars wandered here and there. Rumi's father was not an exception to this. So, he wandered here and there with his family. Of course, it has come to the help of Jalaluddin Muhammad Balka, because at the young age, he faced so many cultures. He came into contact with so many cultures, and those cultures which were very liberal and which were very human. So he had that possibility of liberality. And that is why, as he grew on and on, he became a Sufi. Some scholars say Sufi is the combination of Advaita Vedanta, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Byzantine culture, etc., etc. Of course, Sufism believed in monism, that is Ekishwari Vada, only one God. It accepted Allah was the last prophet. Of course, that Sufism also had this Upanishadic Vedanta Advaita. That is, Vedanta Advaita also believed in monism, and it said everything is union at God at the end, and of course one became associated with God at last and became God himself. That Sufism had got the spirit of Buddhism also. Regarding the unity, it had got the spirit of love also, love of Christianity. That is the love in the form of spirituality, not love in the flesh and blood of human materialistic value. So he understood love in the form of spirituality. That is why whenever he composed poems regarding love, we come to know the spiritual message in that poem. The speciality of Rumi's poems is that he begins with known things and ends with unknown things. And he begins with the materialistic world, but he ends with the spiritualistic world. That is, he is from known to unknown, from materialistic to spiritualistic, and etc. etc. Of course, when we go through the poems of Rumi, we are wondered because his time was a troubled one, a disturbed one. It was very difficult to save the life at that time. But in such a situation, he composed the poems, he propagated his philosophy, he propagated his faith, and not only that, he became famous with that propagation also. So, any of Islamic scholars say Sufism is not a real Islam. Of course, Sufism also says it is liberal, and of course, it has used the jargon of Islamic words. Because if you don't use the jargon of Islamic words in those days, you would be labeled as a heretic and you would be killed. That possibility was there. That is why most of the liberal faiths at that time used the jargon of Islam. Used the Islamic jargon, and by that they saved their skin. It was the need of the hour, but now the time has been changed. Anyhow, that is why that Sufism comes very near to Upanishadic understandings, Buddhism, Christianity, and the moment of devotions, as we see in Karnataka, especially in Vachana movement, especially that is called Sharana Chalavadi, and also we can see it in other cultures, other faiths also. That is, India has seen so many devotees in the 13th and 14th centuries. As Rumi was belonged to that century, he had acquired some of the qualities these devotees. That is why we can see the similarities of these faiths in Sufism. That is why whatever Islamic scholars say, it is un-Islamic may be true to a great extent. It can't be denied, but only philosophers, only the persons in that field should be come to conclusion regarding that. Let them come to conclusion regarding that the Sufis and other differences. But here in India and elsewhere in the world, that Sufism has brought the arts of the people together. That is very important, In the divided times, that Sufism was able to bring together the torn arts and the minds and spread the message of humanity. That is what we see in the devotion movement of India or Sharana Chalavadi in Karnataka or other faiths in the world. Due to this liberality of Rumi, that Rumi's poems are read even in churches, in the synagogues, in the prayer halls, in other areas. Especially Rumi is very famous in Turkey, Iran, especially United States of America. And most of his poems have been translated into so many languages in the world. His poems have been translated into Bengali language. Some of the enthusiasts translated poems of Rumi into Kannada language also. But most of them are translated into English from Persia. Originally his poems are in Persian language. So they have been translated from Persia into English and they are very popular. If you go through the poems of Rumi, you will come to know to what extent Rumi was liberal in his faith. He was not an ardent believer of this faith or that faith. He was liberal. Of course, that liberality can be seen nowadays in India. So, here, when we go through the lives of Dara Shikoh and Aurangzeb, we can see the symptoms of that Rumi in those lives. Because Dara Shikoh belonged to the Qadirian Sufism. Of course, in Mughal Empire, only two persons, I think, remembered forever and ever. They are Akbar and Dara Shikoh, but not others. Because there we can see the love of humanity, and there we see the bringing of torn arts together. That is very important, in the life of a society, in the life of a man. That is what Akbar and Dara Shikoh did it. But unfortunately, Aurangzeb, the younger brother of Dara Shikoh, murdered Dara Shikoh for sake of power. That would be a different story. Let it be to historians. But anyhow, that is there in history. Dara Shikoh was well read compared to other persons at that time. He was a very liberal prince. He would become a liberal ruler if he got the power. But unfortunately, that was not happened. But when we compare the Rumi with these persons, we come to know the greatness of Rumi's poems and the greatness of Rumi's poetry. His magnum opus is Matnavi. It contains 27,000 lines. It is in couplets. It is in the form of 2 lines. So totally 27,000 lines are there. And of course, the literature of Rumi goes pages together, thousands of lines together in poetry as well as prose. Here, I would like to read some of the poems of Rumi for sake of understanding to what extent Rumi is poetic, liberal, and loved human beings. Spiritually, love doesn't mean here in the sense of materialistic world. That would be completely different. That love would be diminished when beauty is destroyed, when beauty is faded. But the love of Rumi is not faded, it is not diminished, it is grown forever and ever as the world goes on and on. That is the difference between materialistic beauty, materialistic love, and the spiritualistic love. Here I read the poem composed by Rumi. The title of the poem is Cause and Effect. The branch exists only to bear the fruit. The branch exists only to bear the fruit, the knowledge of which resides in the root. Would a gardener plant and tend the vine without the promise of the grape and wine? Before this truth, let all your reason pause. What you thought was effect is but the cause. Of course, very nicely, Rumi simplified cause and effect. He gives the examples of fruit and root. Fruit is the effect, root is the cause. Fruit does not grow without the root. So, root and fruit are important. Of course, gardener plants it in the hope of getting grape and wine. Whether he gets it or not, that would be a different thing. That would be immaterial. But anyhow, as it grows, as we come to the end, reason is the cause and thought is the effect. That is, cause and effect can be seen here very nicely. Earthly knowledge. You acquire earthly knowledge, passerby, my friend, that is not knowledge. It is a lie. You acquire earthly knowledge, passerby, my friend, that is not knowledge, it is a lie. The only truth you need to know is Him. Only He can fill your measure to its brim. The only truth you need to know is Him. Only He can fill your measure to its brim. Knowledge like water flows from high to low. Be humble then, my brother, and let His presence flow. So here he says the importance of that spiritualistic knowledge, but not earthly knowledge. Earthly knowledge comes and goes. It comes and disappears. It is known, it is unknown. When unknown becomes known, it fades. Of course, that is why this earthly knowledge is a lie. But if you know something about that spiritual knowledge, something about that Him, that God, and that would become a real knowledge, that will become a real bliss, that will become a real happiness. Of course, we know water flows from high to low. Like that, knowledge flows from high to low. But we can feel the presence of that knowledge in that flowing. Sufi wisdom. To seek a Sufi's wisdom, do not go to books or ink or pages. Rather, no. To seek a Sufi's wisdom, do not go to books or ink or pages. Rather, know that all this wisdom can be found within a human heart which is as white as snow. Here, Jalaluddin Rumi says that if you want to know Sufi's wisdom, you need not to read this book or that book. You need not to write this or that. You need not to turn this page and that page. You need not to go here and there. But the real wisdom is there in the heart of a human being. That heart is very important, you know. Tearing is not important, but a uniting heart is important. Bringing hearts together is very important, but not tearing apart them. Here, this Sufi wisdom in this poem, that Rumi again tells us something about the heart and the union of heart. Because that union of is union of heart is as white as snow. It is crystal clear. It is as white as snow. It is pure. That is why that human heart is very important. If you know this human heart, if you understand this human heart, if you bring together the torn hearts, and if you carry them to a great height, that itself is a Sufist wisdom. Very wonderful. In simple words, Rumi has given us the meaning of Sufist wisdom. When we read this poem, Sufist wisdom, definitely we will remember Upanishads, in which Darasiko did a great work. Because Darasiko tried to translate 50 of Upanishads into Persian language. If he did not try at that time, now we could not have those versions of Upanishads. There lies the greatness of persons like Darasiko and Rumi. So that is why that Sufism is the combination of all faiths, is the combination of all cultures. Here in the poems of Rumi's, we see the short and sweet utterances. They are very concentrative. They begin from known to, passes to unknown. They begin from materialistic world and ends in spiritualistic world. And he gives importance to the humanity, not to the disturbances, not to the distractions, not to the killings, not to the murders, not to the divisions, not to the cutthroats, etc., etc. And of course, Rumi was against all these things. That is why Rumi's poems, even today, are very favorable, are very favorite to everyone in this world. So, even countries like United States of America love and like that Rumi's poems, and India is not an exception. Some of the poems, some of the Rumi's poems have been prescribed as a text for the study of students at the college level and university level also, because they open the world which is different from others. They open the liberal world, open the art-touching world, and reveal the importance of spirituality, reveal the greatness of it. That is what Rumi. So that is why Rumi is not belonging to this culture or that culture. Rumi is not belonging to this faith or that faith. Rumi is belonging to everyone. Rumi is belonging to every culture. Rumi is belonging to every faith. Rumi is belonging to every religion. That is why even today Christians, Yahudis, and others, that is in the churches, in the synagogues, his poems are read. So that shows the greatness of Rumi's poetry and writings. Of course, Rumi was dead on 30th December, 17th December 1276, and his tomb is there in Turkey, I think, in Konya, in the eastern part of Turkey. Of course, so many countries honored him. Even today, that honoring is not yet stopped. That shows the greatness of Rumi's poetry and literature. Share and subscribe. See you in the next episode. Namaskar.